The Ring camera ended my 27-year marriage before my husband even came home. At 2:17 in the morning, it recorded Jack Miller stepping out of my front door with wet hair, his shirt buttoned wrong, and my hand reaching after him from the shadows of the hallway. The video was only 12 seconds long, but it held enough evidence to burn down a life I had spent nearly 3 decades polishing until it shone. Before that night, people in Greenwich thought I was lucky. I was Margaret Collins, 56 years old, wife of Dr. Richard Collins, the kind of man whose name appeared on hospital donor walls and charity invitations printed on thick cream paper. We lived in a white colonial house with black shutters, blue hydrangeas, and a kitchen so perfect strangers sometimes asked who designed it. My children were grown, my lawn was flawless, my marriage looked expensive and steady from the sidewalk. Inside, everything was colder than the marble counters. Richard never raised his voice. That was the cruel part. He did not have to. He ignored me with the calm efficiency of a man walking past furniture he had already paid for. At dinner, he read hospital emails between bites. In bed, he slept with his back turned, one hand still curled around his phone. He remembered tea times, surgical conferences, wine preferences of donors, and the names of every cardiologist under 40. He forgot our 27th anniversary. That morning, I had placed 2 crystal glasses on the table like an idiot. By 6, he was at the country club. By 7, I was alone in the kitchen, watching water spread across the floor from a broken pipe beneath the sink. I knelt in my silk blouse with a towel in my hands, trying to stop the flood, when the contractor arrived. Jack Miller stood in the doorway with muddy boots, rough hands, and eyes that did not slide past me. He looked at the water, then at me, and said I should not be the one freezing my hands on that floor. It was nothing. A simple sentence, but after years of being unseen, it felt like someone had finally turned the lights back on. Jack Miller was supposed to be in my house for 3 days. He stayed in my head for weeks. He came every morning after Richard left for the hospital, parking his old gray truck at the end of the driveway as if he understood that even a vehicle could become gossip in a neighborhood like ours. He worked quietly at first, pulling out ruined cabinets, checking pipes, measuring the space beneath the sink. I told myself I only noticed his hands because they were always moving. Strong hands, scarred hands. Hands that fixed what other people ignored until it broke. By the second week, I was making coffee for 2. It began with harmless things. He asked why I wanted the kitchen redone when it already looked like something from a magazine. I gave the answer Richard had given the designer, something about resale value and better lighting. Jack looked around the room, then asked whether I liked it. No one had asked me that in years. The question followed me all afternoon. Did I like the kitchen? Did I like the house? Did I like the life I had defended so fiercely at dinner parties while quietly disappearing inside it? Jack did not flirt like the men at the country club with polished jokes and wandering eyes. He listened. That was worse. He remembered that I took my coffee black. He noticed when I had not slept. He saw the anniversary roses I bought for myself in the trash and said nothing, which somehow felt kinder than sympathy. One rainy Thursday, he told me about his wife Anna, who had died 5 years earlier. His voice changed when he said her name, becoming softer and more dangerous. Grief had hollowed him out, but it had not made him cold. I envied that. I should have stepped back then. Instead, I stood closer. When his shoulder brushed mine beneath the half-installed cabinet, the contact lasted less than a second. Still, my breath caught like a teenager's. Jack turned, close enough that I could see sawdust on his cheek, and for one terrible moment neither of us moved. That night, I lay beside Richard in our king-size bed, listening to him breathe, while every part of me remembered the warmth of another man's arm. The first real lie I told Richard was that I was fine being left alone during the storm. He called from O'Hare, his voice flattened by airport noise, to say the Chicago conference had run late and he might stay through Sunday. Behind him, I heard laughter, glasses, the easy warmth he saved for colleagues and donors. He reminded me to confirm the salmon option for the hospital fundraiser, then hung up before the thunder shook the windows. By 9, Greenwich had gone dark. The power died with a soft click, taking the refrigerator hum, the hallway lights, and every illusion of safety with it. Rain lashed the windows. A branch scraped the roof like fingernails. I walked through the house with a candle, suddenly aware of how enormous it was, how many rooms had been built for a family that no longer lived there. Then my phone lit up. Jack asked if the ceiling near the new pipes was holding. I should have typed yes. I should have locked the door, poured wine, and waited out the storm like any respectable wife in a respectable neighborhood. Instead, I wrote that the house felt too dark. He arrived 20 minutes later in a soaked jacket, carrying a flashlight and a toolbox. He checked the kitchen, the breaker panel, the leak beneath the sink. He did everything a contractor could reasonably do, and then there was nothing left for him to fix. Still, neither of us moved toward the door. The candlelight made the unfinished kitchen look softer, almost forgiving. I handed him a towel. His fingers brushed mine, and something inside me gave way with a quietness that frightened me more than any shout could have. I started crying before I understood why. Jack did not ask me to explain. He only stepped closer and put his arms around me. For one breath, I was a wife, a mother, a woman old enough to know better. For the next, I was simply alive. The lion I had spent 27 years protecting was right there between us, thin as candle smoke, and I crossed it without saying a word. At dawn, he left through the front door because the garage had jammed in the storm. I watched him go, not knowing the Ring camera had watched him too. After that night, the new kitchen was finished, but I could no longer stand inside it without feeling the floor tilt beneath me. The marble counters gleamed, the brass handles shone. Richard said it looked excellent, then asked where I had put the receipt. He never noticed that I could not meet his eyes over breakfast, or that I flinched whenever the doorbell chimed. I told myself it had happened once because of the storm, loneliness, candlelight, weakness. But Jack texted 3 days later to ask if I was sleeping. I deleted the message, then restored it from the trash before midnight. By the end of the week, I was sitting across from him in a diner 2 towns over, wearing his sunglasses like a criminal and feeling more awake than I had in years. The lies became easier than they should have. Yoga, committee meetings, a sick friend in Stanford. I said them calmly while slipping motel key cards into the zip pocket of my handbag. Each time I came home, I washed my hands twice and stood beside Richard at charity dinners, smiling as if my body had not learned another language. But Jack changed once he knew I would come back. He began asking how long I planned to keep pretending. He hated Richard with the confidence of a man who had only seen the empty spaces in my marriage, not the years that built them. He parked too close to the country club one afternoon. He sent messages after midnight. He wanted promises I had never meant to make. Then the small cracks widened. A neighbor mentioned his truck. Richard questioned a motel charge on the secondary card. I said it was a billing error and watched him almost believe me. The person who finally saw the truth was Emily, my youngest daughter, in New York. Our Ring camera was still linked to her phone from college break-ins years ago. After a system update, old storm footage synced to her app. At 2:17 a.m., she watched Jack leave my house. She did not call immediately. She saved the video, packed a weekend bag, and came home for the hospital fundraiser. The fundraiser was held beneath crystal chandeliers at the country club, the kind of room where every smile had been rehearsed and every secret wore perfume. Richard stood at the podium in a black tuxedo, praised by donors, nurses, board members, and women who had envied my life for years. I stood beside the stage in navy silk and pearls, holding a glass of champagne I could not drink. Across the room, Emily watched me with red-rimmed eyes. She had asked me that afternoon if there was anything I needed to tell her, and I had looked at my own daughter and lied. That lie was what broke her. Halfway through Richard's speech about loyalty, community, and the families who stood behind great men, his phone vibrated on the podium. I saw him glance down. I saw the color drain from his face. 12 seconds of video lit the screen. Jack leaving our house before dawn, then my hand reaching from the dark. The silence spread faster than any scream. Richard stopped speaking. Emily began to cry. At the back of the ballroom, I saw Jack near the bar, dressed in a borrowed jacket, waiting for me to choose him in public like our affair had been love instead of damage. When he realized no one in that room saw him as a savior, he slipped out before the whispers could reach him. Richard did not shout. He simply walked past me as if I had become a stranger. By morning, the video had traveled through Greenwich faster than church bells. The hospital board knew. The neighbors knew. The women from the charity committee sent messages that sounded kind but tasted like poison. Richard filed for divorce within the month. Emily stopped answering my calls. Jack wrote that we could finally be together. I deleted his number. 6 weeks later, I packed 3 suitcases into my car while the hydrangeas bloomed as if nothing had happened. Richard kept the house. I kept the truth I had tried to bury. I had betrayed my family, but my marriage had been dying long before I opened the door. As I drove away from Greenwich, I understood the punishment was not losing my perfect life. It was realizing how long I had mistaken a beautiful cage for a home.